All right, inside your new Lexus GX550, you're going to get a twin-turbo V6. A lot of people are worried about it, so let's talk about it. So it's going to get this 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6, but the point today is that this engine has been out for 7 years, and it's actually available in a few different horsepower outputs, the same exact engine. And we're going to talk about how Toyota Lexus is kind of playing around with the horsepower output of this engine here. Before we can talk about the engine and the GX550, we have to talk about where it came from, and that's the Lexus LS here, which is Lexus's flagship vehicle. So the 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6 that's going to be in the Lexus GX550 is not new. It's been around since 2017. So by the time the Lexus GX550 gets to dealers in pretty much March 2024, the engine will have been 7 years old. So yes, 7 years old. So a lot of people think, oh, the GX550 is going to get some new radical engine and it's not going to be tested. It's not going to be tried and true. Well, the fact of the matter is it's been around since 2017, and you're looking at it here. So in 2017, we got the 5th generation Lexus LS. Now, if you don't know what the Lexus LS is, that's the flagship Lexus. There was a time when the word Lexus was just a car, and it was the LS. So when Lexus debuted in America, yeah, I know they had the ES, but the LS was the Lexus. You didn't even denote that you had a Lexus LS. You just said you had this vehicle here, the Lexus. And it was just, I have a Lexus. That's how epic the vehicle was. It's Lexus's and Toyota's pride and joy. And the engine that they put in the Lexus LS is imperative to keep that Lexus reputation. What engine did they put in? Right here, the new 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6. It produces 314 horsepower. Now, the GX550 only gets 349 horsepower. But the most important part that we want to start out with is this here, 2017. So by the time GX550, again, hits dealer lots, that engine will have been in the real world without any problems since 2017. Yes, I know a Lexus LS is lighter than a SUV, blah, blah, blah. We know that. The point is it's without, with little exceptions, the same exact engine. It also has full-time four-wheel drive, these Lexus LSs, so you got all four wheels going all the time. They're under similar loads. But the point is, not so much that it's been around for 7 years, but they were proud enough to put it on their flagship Lexus LS, the Lexus of all Lexuses. So here you come, ready to get your Lexus GX550, and the question is, should you be concerned about this engine? And the short answer is no, because the engine going in this thing right here has, again, been around for 7 years on a vehicle that is way more important to the global reputation of Lexus. And that, again, is that flagship Lexus LS. So it's been, again, tested on that, and it's going in this, and it's going to do you just fine. But let's talk about the different horsepower outputs to give us some clues about what Toyota and Lexus are kind of doing with this engine here. All right, as mentioned, this engine gets 416 horsepower on this Lexus LS there. On the Land Cruiser 300 in the world market, it gets 409 horsepower. And for the Lexus LX600, I believe it also gets 409 horsepower. And for the Sequoia Hybrid, since it's hooked up to a electric motor, it gets even more horsepower. So in Sequoia Hybrid form, it can get 437 horsepower. So essentially, it seems like in the Lexus GX460 that the engine has been, quote, detuned. Now, this is not a surprise to anybody that's been following this, but to people who don't know, the bottom line with this engine is Toyota is essentially, they're essentially software limiting the output of the GX550's 3.4 twin-turbo charge engine. This thing could make 416 horsepower, 409, but they're, quote, detuning the GX to 349 horsepower. Again, not a surprise. People saw this coming. They're not going to put the 409 horsepower engine yet in this GX 550. A lot of people want to know, well, okay, why? You know, why if this engine, this 3.4 twin turbo can make 409 horsepower, why did Lexus take away 60 horsepower here and give this GX only 349 horsepower? And that's a great question. And the answer is they consolidated this TNGAF platform. So you got a bunch of vehicles on this TNGAF platform. The Land Cruiser 250, aka the Land Cruiser in quotations coming to America, is on this TNGAF platform. So we've got a lot of vehicles on the same platform. Lexus LX600, of course, is on the TNGAF platform. And, of course, the platform was made for the flagship Land Cruiser 300 in the world market. And the Tundra and Toyota Sequoia, of course, are in this platform as well. So you got a bunch of cars, a bunch of different cars sharing the same platform. So you get the point of this rambling here. You got all this platform sharing going on that Toyota didn't used to do. In other words, they consolidate a lot of platforms here, and prior to this consolidation, these vehicles were on different platforms. They had different wheelbases, different components, you know, and I'm talking about primary components. I know there's going to be little differences in the body here and there. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the bottom line is this GX460 is also a few different other vehicles now as well. So Toyota had to dumb down the engine that you get with your GX550 so they wouldn't sabotage or poach sales from themselves by putting too much power in this Lexus GX550. If they put 409 horsepower in this GX550, people will say, well, why don't I just get this? It's cheaper than the LX, you know? So it is quite interesting to see how Toyota and Lexus have basically software detuned this engine. As far as I can tell, there's no difference in the displacement, the turbochargers, and all the other mechanical components within this engine. It is just as if the ECU is told to not be as powerful. And that's an interesting way that Toyota and Lexus are taking about separating the classes of their vehicle and making them so they're different. That's what I'm trying to babble out here. You get what I'm saying. So instead of putting 3 or 4 distinct engines in these vehicles on this platform, they're taking the same engine for the most part, at least when it comes to the GX, the LS, the LX600, and the Tundra. They're playing games with the programming, the logic, or whatever controls how much horsepower this engine puts out in order for it to not cross any class lines. Okay, so what? Who cares? They have different engine. What's the point? What are you rambling about? Well, there really is no point, but there's some interesting things, so bear with me. And that is, you might be able to software hack and up-tune your GX550 one day to squeeze out some more horsepower. Now, I don't know how to do it or if that's impossible, but it seems to be theoretically possible. So that's the first thing. The second thing is something I want to underline about the TNGA platform in general, and a lot of international viewers, especially those from Australia, who insist that this vehicle here, this GX550, is the Prado, the Land Cruiser Prado, this sort of thing, and I say no. This GX550 is now the Land Cruiser, basing that assumption that the real Land Cruiser is the Land Cruiser 300. This here is the Land Cruiser 300 in the world market. The only thing missing is the front locker. So the GX550 in overtrail trim does not have a third locker. It doesn't have a third row, but that's not a mechanical thing. As far as mechanics go, the only thing missing from the flagship Land Cruiser 300 GR Sport is the fact that it does not have a front locker. Every other feature is there. So this now is the American Land Cruiser. Now, it does have a smaller engine, as we mentioned, not physically smaller, but the The controlled output of this engine is 350 horsepower, 349, but you get what I'm saying. 350 instead of the 409. So technically it's missing the front locker and 60 extra horsepower. But other than that, it's the same thing as the Land Cruiser GR Sport. Same exact thing. So this is your American Land Cruiser. Now, a lot of foreign or Australian people will say, that's the Prado. It's the Prado. We've always had the Prado, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I know what a Prado is. We know what a Prado is here in America. It's the Lexus GX460. The issue is Lexus GX460 had a shorter wheelbase, and it was smaller all around. This vehicle now, this Lexus GX550, or if you remember, it's on TNGAF platform, so the Land Cruiser 250, aka the Land Cruiser coming to America, aka the New World Market Land Cruiser Prado, it's no longer the Prado. The Prado is dead because this wheelbase of 112 inches roughly is the same exact wheelbase as a full-size Land Cruiser 200, the old full-size Land Cruiser that is, and the new Land Cruiser. So there is no more short wheelbase, small body, mini Land Cruiser. It's all a full-size, 112-inch wheelbase, full-on, full-size Land Cruiser type of vehicle. The Prado is gone. The Prado is dead. And I think why many international viewers, especially Australians, struggle to understand this concept about the Prado being dead is because this here is the Lexus GX460, the predecessor, of course, to the GX550 that we're talking about. And this is a Land Cruiser Prado. What makes this a Prado is the fact that it's got a shorter wheelbase of about 109.8 inches. So over 2 inches shorter wheelbase overall. In addition, it's shorter, and most importantly, it's narrow. So this is a short wheelbase, and this wheelbase on this GX460, this is shorter than a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. So for off-roading, and this is my point, all those from Australia listening, that short wheelbase is very important out here, especially in America, where we have notorious narrow trails. So unlike the Australian Outback, where a full-size Land Cruiser is whatever, and you can say, well, a full-size Land Cruiser can off-road because we take it on the Outback, blah, blah, blah. That's great, but outside of Australia, so I'm talking about here in America, the African market to some extent, the Middle Eastern market, the European market, the Asian market, we have narrow, tight trails. I know this trail doesn't appear to be tight, and it's not the tightest trail, so don't use this as an example. But here in America, we have tight trails, and you need a short wheelbase for that breakover angle. You also need a whole narrow, look at the mirrors tucked in here. You need narrowness in order to do American-style trails here. We don't have a great big Outback, and though, again, this video doesn't show it, we have a lot of shelf roads, narrow canyons, all sorts of narrow terrain where you're going to want a short wheelbase for that breakover angle, and a narrower, smaller, shorter dimensions all around. That's why the Jeep Wrangler in its two-door configuration is considered the quintessential off-road vehicle. It's got a short wheelbase. I don't know what it is, 90 inches or whatever. It's shorter than this here. But your new GX550 that's coming out doesn't have this wheelbase anymore. It's no longer. It's the same as a full-size Land Cruiser. So it's a big vehicle, and that makes a big difference off-roading this on most trails that Americans will encounter, or at least those living outside of Australia will encounter. So when I say that the Prado is dead, I mean the size of it, the wheelbase, the dimensions, the mini Land Cruiser is gone, because the Prado Land Cruiser 250, or whatever they're calling it. All right, this thing, what they're calling now the Prado, this now has a 112-inch wheelbase. This is a fat wheelbase. This is a fat pig of a Land Cruiser now. Okay, so here in America, that's all good, but calling this a Prado, which is what they're going to call this in the world market, they're going to call this thing a Land Cruiser Prado. It doesn't have Prado dimensions at all. So the Prado part, which is very important for, I hate to sound whatever, but, quote, real hardcore off-roading. It doesn't have that short wheelbase that makes that better. And when I say quote, real hardcore off-road, I just mean that is a wheelbase that is conducive of American-style off-roading. So the type of off-roading that a two-door Jeep Wrangler offers. It's gone here. This is not a Prado. It's a fat, full-size Land Cruiser now. It's the same exact frame and body, as you can see, as the GX550. They just put a smaller engine in it. So when we say Prado is dead, we're talking about the overall dimensions and wheelbase of the vehicle. Something like this two-door Jeep, these two-door Jeeps that you see here, with their tiny, short wheelbase and the relatively narrow width, this is ideal, everybody would agree, for off-roading, especially in America, where this thing needs to fit through narrow trails and needs to have that superior breakover angle. Many people don't realize that the GX460, aka the Land Cruiser Prado, had a shorter wheelbase than this Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, which are all over the trails and are, of course, extremely capable. But the GX460, aka the real Land Cruiser Prado, the real mini Land Cruiser, has a shorter wheelbase than this Jeep. Even though it's a bigger SUV and weighs way more, it actually has a shorter wheelbase than a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, aka a four-door Jeep Wrangler. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can hear tell you, it doesn't matter. The size doesn't matter. It matters. Look here. See this giant rock right here? See this big boulder right here? It's these rocks over here. And I know this doesn't look off camber or anything. That's just the camera flattening it out. There's a giant boulder here. And this is why we call it the Land Cruiser Prado, and we call it the Prado. I'm squeezing by this giant boulder. I'm being tilted in. And again, I know the cameras make it all look flat. But this is actually a situation where a Jeep Wrangler, a two-door Jeep, a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, or a short wheelbase Land Cruiser, aka the Land Cruiser Prado, shines, especially here in America. We have to squeeze by this. The mirrors are pulled in. I'm being dumped in this boulder. This is the rear fenders are like inches, not even an inch, centimeters away from scraping this big boulder. Okay, a full-size Land Cruiser is going to have an issue here. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it's wider and longer. Now, I'm not even going to get into the breakover angle, which is another thing, because these rocks all over here, and you understand that shorter wheelbase and a narrower vehicle on these type of trails is advantageous, which ironically, that's why the Prado was created, this GX460 Land Cruiser Prado, because the full-size Land Cruiser was getting too fat and big to do any, quote, real off-roading. It was losing its Toyota Jeep / Jeep Wrangler roots. It was getting fat and wide and long wheelbase and too many, just too fat. And it couldn't do, normal off-roading. At least what here in America we call normal off-roading. Yes, sorry, I know I'm going on way off on tangents here. These are just casual videos. So when you see the yellow mouse going, we're just having a casual kind of informal ranting about Toyota and Lexus stuff, off-road related stuff. So I know I've been off on a tangent here, but there is a practical use for a narrow, a shorter wheelbase off-road vehicle. Here you can see we're on a shelf road. This is dumping you off a cliff. Again, I know the camera will make this look flat, but this is narrow here. So we need these Prado type vehicles. And again, the 4Runner also has, the Toyota 4Runner shares the body as the Prado GX460. So again, helping those in Australia understand why we say the Prado is dead and the Lexus GX550 now is the full-size Land Cruiser. Because going down this sort of shelf road that you see here, this is rock wall to the left side and a cliff to the right side. Even though it doesn't look treacherous on camera, it is. I can assure you it's narrow. It's going to, again, not make it impossible, but it is going to add a certain level of sketch to the mix when you are going against these type of trails. Will there be advantages in some places? Sure. Yeah. Having a bigger wheelbase GX550 or quote new Prado. But again, few can argue that the short, narrow, and shorter wheelbase, again, thinking back to that two-door Jeep Wrangler, nobody can argue that those angles, approach angle, departure angle, breakover angle, blah, 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 that comes from that smaller package is... Nobody can argue that that's not advantageous in most situations, which is why you don't see a lot of full-sized pickup trucks and things like that on trails like these. You just don't see it because you need to maneuver. And I don't know if Australia has this or what, but this sort of nonsense here is very, very common all over America. So when I say the Prado is dead, I mean the little tiny Land Cruiser is gone. And yes, I know in some markets they had the FJ Cruiser, the Toyota FJ Cruiser, which was small, and the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado Sumo, which is even smaller. So, you're talking about an even shorter wheelbase to help you out on these narrow, tight trails. So I'm rambling a lot here about the the overall dimensions of the GX550 versus the GX460. Just to hammer home that it is a bigger, fatter vehicle, and that will affect off-road stuff. So am I saying there's a disadvantage of the GX550 / the new Prado that's now basically a full-size Land Cruiser? Kinda, but only in the sense that you just do know that you're not getting a mini Land Cruiser, you're getting a full-size Land Cruiser. And that's why I say this vehicle here, in its over-trail trim, I know that's not the over-trail right there, but in its over-trail trim, which you see there, this over-trail trim, this is the USA version of the Land Cruiser 300 GRS, aka GR Sport, without the front locker, without the third row, and without 60 horsepower. So it's not. Don't think it as a literal negative, though it can be. So I know I'm talking out of both sides here, but just know that this is a big boy Land Cruiser now. This is the Land Cruiser. It is no longer the short, narrow, little skinny, narrow, short wheelbase Prado. This is the same Land Cruiser 300 that you see in the world market. So just keep that in mind. You're getting a big boy Land Cruiser here, and this is why I'll always say that this is the closest thing that Americans get, the the GX550 Overtrail trim, to the actual flagship world market Land Cruiser 300. Toyota did a lot of consolidation, and it's confusing a lot of people. The only thing you need to know is the short wheelbase Land Cruiser is gone, at least for the time being. So this is all big boy Land Cruiser platform. Maybe you'll be able to tweak the engines with some sort of software mod, but do realize this has been a complete video of mindlessly rambling about this topic without any sort of cohesion or guidance. So if you found this video helpful, entertaining, or amusing, please remember to like and subscribe and share. Do keep in mind that this is just food for thought. It's just rambling. Though I do think we've talked about some objective things and objective differences that many people may not be aware of. They may think that this GX, oh, that's the small GX. That's the small Land Cruiser. It's no longer small. This is the Land Cruiser. The GX as we know it is dead. The Prado as we know it is dead. And when I say as we've known it, meaning since it came out, those were small baby Land Cruisers, we used to call them. This is not a baby anymore. There is no more GX. I hate to say it, but my personal biggest gripe about the new GX is nothing to do with any of the features. Truly, it's the fact that the baby part is gone. and it will take some adapting to this. You know, it's just gone. There's no way around it. You can't make the thing smaller. You can't make a shorter wheelbase out of this. You know, imagine you're in a Lexus, or forget about Lexus. Imagine you're in a Land Cruiser Prado, and imagine you're in a full-size Land Cruiser 200, the older generations. Okay, they're bigger. There's just two different vehicles. Both have the same off-road capabilities as far as the mechanics go. But as far as their overall dimensions, you're just not getting around the size. And this GX, if you were to sit this GX550 here, if you were to put that next to the GX460 that we have, the current generation GX460, you're going to see that they're two different vehicles. This is way bigger, so that will affect you off-road. So I have rambled absolutely enough. Again, thank you. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you, and have a great, great day.